Okay, folks, we're going old school. We're going to do it this way. I have tried 3 times now to go live for the government affairs update for February 2024, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. Trying to do some new things, trying to get Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to all stream live and at the same time, and it is simply, it's just not working. That's the short version. Some problems earlier on, and it just wouldn't work. Audio wasn't there. Sounds like the second time I tried it wasn't there either. So again, apologize for that. I'm actually doing this at almost midnight Tuesday night. I tried, and then I had some other obligations that I had to get to, and couldn't get back to doing this right away. So, long, crazy explanation for that. Again, I apologize. Hopefully this is working correctly. If folks are on Instagram or Facebook, if you could give me an audio check, I would really appreciate it. I'm not seeing anybody comment that they can't hear me, so I'm going to assume that you can. So let's go ahead and get started. We don't want to take up too much of your time, and besides, it's been a long day for me, and I need to get this accomplished because there's some important stuff we need to talk about. First things first, did you get a postcard in the mail that looks like this? If you have an aircraft in Alaska, registered in Alaska, you should have gotten one of those cards. That's part of the GA survey, the General Aviation Survey that is put out by the FAA through a contractor. So it's not the actual FAA asking the questions. There's a contractor that's asking them, and then they go through and put all that data together. It's important that we fill these things out, folks. I know a lot of people don't want the government knowing a lot of the information that's in that document, in that survey, but it is important that we fill this stuff out. And here's the reason why. The FAA needs to know how many hours we are flying, and they also need to know what the equipage is in our aircraft. What kind of radios do you have? Do you have a GPS receiver? Are you ADS-B equipped? Do you have an NDB or ADF receiver? Because we need to know, and that helps me make decisions on how to better advocate for our needs here in Alaska, specifically with the things that are going on. And so it's important that you fill that out. We're dealing with some issues with NDBs being decommissioned, and I'll tell you, it's a little hard to advocate for those when I don't know how many people are actually truly using them. Not just turning them on because they're in the cockpit to have it as a backup and a redundancy. Those are important, but do we need to fight to keep those things? This survey is important for you to fill out because that gives me that data I need. It tells the FAA the equipage of the fleet as well. Speaking of redundancy and navigation equipment, there is another GPS jamming event that is occurring here in Alaska at this time. It goes until the 22nd of the month. Hopefully you are aware of that. Hopefully you've been keeping track of notices to air missions or NOTAMs. I have to consciously say that in my head before I say it out loud because it's changed. The nomenclature for that has changed, still called NOTAMs, but anyway. Here's the deal. That notice talks about these huge rings of potential areas that GPS could be out of, you could be denied access to GPS. They could be jammed, essentially. The concern is that area has always been depicted out of an abundance of caution during these events. I appreciate the caution that the FAA shows towards that. The Department of Defense is very careful to keep an eye on operational security and not tell the whole world what our capabilities really are when it comes to our tactics, our capabilities when it comes to radio interference. So I get it. Here's what I don't appreciate, and here's where it becomes a problem, is these notices are so big in areas where most people and flying in these areas are not affected actually by the jamming, and so they don't pay as much attention the next time. And you do through 2 or 3 of these, and then folks kind of blow them off, and that's happening. And so my concern with that is that at one point somebody's going to blow off one of these notices and go flying and get themselves in a position where they need GPS to be able to safely get through where they are trying to navigate through, and then all of a sudden GPS goes away because it was jammed. Now, the bigger question is, should that person have been doing those things? Probably not, but the reality is when we send out misleading information and people don't see the impacts that they were told could be there, they eventually become desensitized to that, and so that's a problem. So I've been working with the Department of Defense and with the FAA to try to do a better job of accurately depicting these things. Just an example, this current test, Talkeetna is inside the ring of 50 foot above the ground level, potentially being jammed. Do I think that that's a legitimate, real possibility? I do not. And here's the reason why. What the FAA puts out does not take into account curvature of the earth and terrain. Because if it did, you would see that there's no way that signal can get through the Alaska Range and through the Talkeetna Mountains to get to Talkeetna to be able to jam at 50 feet above ground level. But yet that's what we're told. We're told to expect it to not be available. And so, again, let's be realistic about where we can expect some of these things, building in a safety margin, of course, and building in maybe a little bit to not give away operational security. But the FAA and the Department of Defense have a credibility issue, in my opinion, when it comes to these notices, because they are simply not reflecting the reality of the exercises that they are using these jamming devices in, and it's a problem. So I'm working on that, and I encourage you to always pay attention to these notices. Please don't dismiss them, but do your homework and keep up to speed on that. Speaking of talking to the FAA, are you signed up for the FAA Fast Blast? The FAA safety team has a mail list of ability to send out notices to pilots and mechanics and other airmen to be able to know when events are happening in your area, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a seminar, whether it's GPS notices like this. And what the FAA is finding is that we have a very small number, a very small percentage of the aviation community in the state of Alaska that has signed up for that. And it is a resource and a tool for you to be able to get information directly from the FAA. If you are not signed up for that, I encourage you to do a search on your web browser for FAA Safety Team and find out how you can sign up for their Fast Blast mailing list. It should be pretty easy to find, and go in and just insert some things in there with your email address and pilot certificate number or mechanic certificate, so they can kind of help target and tailor some of these notifications to what you need. So encourage you to do that, because it's important that we have the ability to get that information directly from the FAA. I try every way that I can. The other staff of the Airmen's Association does a very good job of getting our newsletters out via email. Be honest with you, the transponder, by the time it gets put in the transponder, it's usually out of date when it comes to meeting notices, so we try not to put those things in the printed copy of the transponder. So avail yourself of the ability of the FAA to notify you. Something else you need to avail yourself of is scholarships. If you or anyone you know is interested in a career in aviation and any area of aviation, the Alaska Airmen's Association probably has a scholarship that you could qualify for. And so go to our website, alaskaairmen.org, and you'll find information about the scholarship program. Deadline for applications is March 1st, so please don't waste any time filling out those applications. Like I said, there's a lot of money to be given away for folks who are interested in an aviation career. Some other updates for you. Two-way texting with flight service. If you're not aware of that program, if you have a master flight plan on file with Alaska Flight Service, which you have a master flight plan on file, don't you? And it is current, isn't it? If you don't know what I'm talking about, call Flight Service and ask them. They'll be glad to help you fill out a master flight plan. And it's basically the information that never changes. Your contact info, the base of the base aircraft, the base of operations for the aircraft, the airport where the airplane stays, the color of the airplane, those types of things that never change in a flight plan. You can have that form already filled out with Flight Service. Now, one of the benefits to that is that it then allows you to participate in several different programs, one of which is being able to text with FAA. Up till now, cell phones, satellite phones, and Spot X were the devices that you could use to text to Flight Service to update your flight plan, amend it, cancel it, or activate a flight plan. You can't file a flight plan yet, but you can do just about everything else with a flight plan via two-way texting. The Garmin inReach devices are now approved for that program. It's been a problem getting those things done because of the way Iridium handles phone numbers and other things, without getting into too many details about that. But the Garmin inReach devices are now approved for that program, so that's some great news. Another update for you on some things that are changing and improving. Customs and Border Protection at the Alcan border crossing have agreed to reevaluate their times of clearing aircraft in Northway. We've got a pretty good idea what the window will look like, and I mean a window of opportunity. Instead of two set times during the day, there's a window of opportunity now to be able to be cleared in Northway. We're still finalizing all those things to make sure it's really happening, but well, it's happening, but to happen the way that we anticipated actually coming out. So I'm hesitant to give you specifics about that, other than to tell you that you should call the Alcan border station early if you plan to cross and clear at Northway. And when I say early, I mean several days ahead of time, to let them know you're coming, to talk to them about the process, to make sure you're fully understanding what's expected of you and they know who you are and what's coming. Call 2 or 3 days ahead of time, call the day before. Of course, you need at least a 2-hour notice for them to be able to give you authorization to enter the U.S. And so this window of opportunity now, instead of these 2 times, early morning and mid-afternoon, were problematic for weather, problematic for services available in Whitehorse on your way into Alaska. So some great news there. Encourage you to reach out to them and talk about your options for clearing in Northway. You should be looking on the website for Customs and Border Protection to find out all those information already, but you can do a search there and find the Alcan border station and get their contact info. A couple other things I want to update you about. 100 low lead continues to be in the news, and California is making some waves with that. There's some possibility of some things coming into play that 100 low lead may not be available. The FAA is not happy about that because they want to make sure that 100 low lead is available until we get all the way through this process. And if you have not seen my podcast on our YouTube channel about 100 low lead, I did an interview with Ross St. John of Crowley Fuels, and then an interview with Kurt Hartwig with Eagle Fuel Cell Company. And so some really good information about how these things directly impact Alaska when it comes to supply chain issues, and how this transition to a unleaded fuel could impact some of the other components of our aircraft besides just the engine, fuel system components and things. So you've heard me talk about that podcast before. I just want to let you know it's there if you haven't seen it yet. Been getting a lot of good reviews, a lot of folks in pretty high places within the FAA, in the congressional delegation in D.C. Some other folks have gotten back to me with feedback about that podcast, how they've appreciated the data that's there, and how it gives a good perspective on our unique issues here in Alaska. So I encourage you to watch for that. Something else that we've done on the national level, Senator Dan Sullivan from Alaska has been a champion for aviation for pretty much his entire term and career in D.C., which is coming up on 10 years, I think, that he's been in office. He supported the Backcountry Protection Act, which we went on record as supporting from the Alaska Airmen's Association, and along with several other Western state organizations, aviation organizations, asking that to be included in the FAA reauthorization. And it cleared the Senate Science, Commerce, and Transportation Committee. It's now waiting on the full Senate to pass that FAA reauthorization. And then, of course, we've got to get the conference committees together between the House and the Senate. Hopefully that Backcountry Protection Act will go through all the way to the end. It essentially, just a really quick rundown, basically tells the FAA to expand the scope of the exempt activities from 91-119. Now that's the rule that talks about minimum safe altitudes and distances away from persons or property. You may remember there was a case brought against Trent Palmer, YouTube content creator down in the Reno, Nevada area, where the FAA disagreed with his decision to do a low pass, an inspection pass over a potential landing site. Trent did not think that that was a safe place to land, and so he didn't go back. They said he got too close to persons or property and that was not in the act of landing. Well, he didn't land because he didn't think it was safe. And the only way he knew it wasn't safe was to go in and drag the strip. Well, you can kind of see where this goes. The Alaska Airmen's Association feels that it is important that we encourage our members to actually do an inspection pass to make sure a landing site is safe. Most of the people I've talked to within the FAA agree with that practice, but there's the notion that if you did not land, was it in the act of landing that you did that pass? So this Backcountry Protection Act intends to clear up the language and clear up the intent of those rules to make it acceptable to do those things again. So again, it made it through committee. It's on the floor of the Senate now with the rest of the FAA reauthorization, and we have high hopes that it will make it all the way through that process. Just two more things to talk about before we wrap up. And again, I apologize for this not being during the normal time that I do these events. I had some pretty significant technical difficulties getting it done, trying to change up the way it happens with some of the software and hardware we're using, and it just simply is not working. Yeah, if you look at when this actually went live, you'll realize it's after midnight, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. But wanted to get it out to you. Two things. Have you bought your raffle ticket yet for the aircraft that we're giving away this year? If you haven't, I encourage you to go online to alaskaairmen.org and buy yourself more than one if you like, because your participation in that raffle helps fund the efforts of the Alaska Airmen's Association. The scholarships we give away, the Next Gen program of getting young people involved into aviation. A lot of our public outreach is funded through that raffle. It helps put on the Great Alaska Aviation Gathering. It also helps with my position of doing government and legislative affairs. So I encourage you to help fund the activities of the Airmen's Association. Your membership dues helps. Your membership as just a number is very valuable for us, but it doesn't cover all the financial cost of running the association and all the programs that we have, and that's what that raffle is for a fundraiser. Last thing I want to mention, that if you're in the Seattle-Tacoma area this weekend, as more specifically at the Washington State Fairgrounds in Puyallup, this weekend is the Northwest Aviation Trade Show and Conference. I will be there Saturday and Sunday to actually attend the conference and to walk around and talk to vendors, because I don't have an opportunity to do that at the Great Alaska Aviation Gathering. A lot of these vendors come up to Palmer in May, and I don't have much of an opportunity to just visit and to talk and to be a participant in that. So I'm looking forward to being there for that. Always see a lot of members at that event, and I appreciate folks coming up and saying hello and the conversations that we have at that event there. So again, I'll be in the Puyallup area, Seattle, Tacoma area this weekend at the Northwest Aviation Trade Show and Conference. The reason for I'm going down to that part of the world is not only to attend that conference and trade show, but next week we'll be having meetings with the FAA at the Western Service Center there in Washington, just south of the SeaTac Airport. That's where a lot of the folks that make decisions about Alaska, that's where their offices are. And so I'll be down there having face-to-face meetings with a lot of those folks next week. So again, appreciate folks being able to watch these things and the feedback that we get, and it is important that we hear from you, and we do appreciate your membership. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties and the delay in getting this out there to you, but hopefully you're able to at least watch it as it comes back up in your feed in the days ahead, and we'll see what we can get done for next time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight.